Brad Hill here. There is no better way to share a story than around a campfire. And if you are in the Mobile Bay area, there is no better place to get firewood than our friends at Mobile Bay Firewood. This is a family-owned business, and I personally love using their easy-to-light, kiln-dried firewood in my fire pit. So use promo code MBFTSO for $15 off of your next order at mobilebayfirewood.com. Longtime friends of the podcast, the Growley Leather Company is a family-owned leather goods company in southern Alabama. All of their leather goods are designed and handcrafted to come alongside you in your daily life, share in your adventures, and reflect your character. Brian and I both enjoy products from Growley Leather. So visit growleyleather.com and use promo code TSO2022 for a 15% discount at checkout. Find you a leather journal and fill it with stories from the storied outdoors. This is The Storied Outdoors, a podcast somewhere between Lewis and Tolkien and Lewis and Clark, finding clarity in the stories we tell and the adventures that shape us. Welcome to The Storied Outdoors. My name is Brad Hill, and I'm joined as always by my good pal Brian Gill. And we are fired up today to have Sean Dietrich join us today. He's a columnist, a songwriter, a novelist, and a podcast host, known for commentary on life in the American South. His writings they have appeared all over the place in publications from Newsweek, Southern Living, the Birmingham News, the Mobile Press Register, and he's authored 13 books, or is it 14 now? Because we're going to talk about a new book.
I believe this might be the 14th. You're right.
All right. There we go. Also, man, you're the creator of Sean of the South podcast. Born in Kansas City, Missouri, but landed in Florida for a while, but close enough to be an Alabamian. And now I think you're a bona fide living in Alabama, if that's right. And so we're glad to have you. Married for 19 years to your sweet wife, Jamie, and proud parents of a bloodhound. Is that right? Is it a bloodhound? Did I see that correctly?
Yep. Yeah, she's a black and tan bloodhound, but she looks like a big red bloodhound now because the black has just kind of been grown out. So
there you go. Well, what's her name?
Oh, that's Thelma Lou.
Thelma Lou, the bloodhound.
Thelma Lou. Like Barney and like Andy Griffith Show.
There we go. Thelma Lou. Thelma.
Yeah, I think we left off on the intro, the bio that the Andy Griffith enthusiast. I mean,
yeah, big Andy Griffith fan. Actually, before I named her Thelma Lou, I was invited to go up to Mount Airy to interview the original Thelma Lou before she died, which was. She was in her 90s. It was extraordinary. She kissed me on the cheek when she saw me, and I didn't wash my cheek for 10 years.
Oh man. Well, man, welcome to the podcast, man.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sean, we have an Alabama connection. Bruton, Alabama. Our paths have not crossed, but I think that you have a connection there. I have a connection. I tell people that I grew up there, but I was not actually born there. Whenever I was born, my parents were living there, but the hospital didn't deliver babies. So we had to go across the state line into Florida to be delivered.
Were you born in Pensacola?
Milton.
Milton, okay.
Yeah. So we lived there for 4 years. My mom and my sister still live there. And Bruton's a special place for us. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, my wife is from Bruton. And when I met her, we spent most of our time in Bruton, so it became like a second home. And all her people from Bruton.
That's cool. That's cool.
I think I know your sister. Is that right? Is it your sister?
Yeah, Brandy. That's right. Yeah, you and she and Neil. I think they've run in a few circles with you guys at some point. So,
yeah, cool.
Yeah. They were instrumental in trying to help me connect to Jamie to get you on our calendar, and so
Bruton's a weird place. Wherever I go, I can be anywhere in the United States. It doesn't matter. I will meet somebody from Bruton, Alabama.
Yeah,
it is. And Jamie has been overseas before. She's been in London, England, Canada, and she will meet people from Bruton, Alabama. It is the strangest phenomenon.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, you either know somebody or are you're related to them, and they're from where in
That's
Alabama.
right.
That's probably Bruton.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that may be just like a general Alabama sort of experience. I grew up, Sean, over in Monroeville, so
Okay,
you go down 84 from Bruton there, and grew up in Monroeville, Alabama, and I
Monroe
was.
County.
That's right. I was just out in Temple, Texas, Central Texas, leading worship for a church out there. A buddy of mine's a pastor. And this couple comes up to me. It's like, I heard you're from Alabama. And I said, yes, ma'am. Where did you? And she said, where did you grow up? I said, I grew up just outside of Monroeville, Alabama. And she said, well, my husband's from South Monroe County. I was like,
Wow.
You can't make this stuff up, man.
No, it doesn't matter where you are too in Alabama, which I love. You can go to the Pig, you can go into any grocery store. Everybody in the aisles, if they kind of know each other, they're going to kind of try to figure out how they're related somehow. They're going to, who do we know the same people, and it'll take forever, but you'll eventually figure it out.
That is so true. Man, one of the things that you are known for among many is your writing, and man, I love your style. I love your voice of the way that you approach storytelling. We heard that one of your first stories that you wrote came after a fishing trip. What was it about that experience that made you want to write it down?
Well, in our generation, I'm guessing we're all pretty much the same generation because we all have enough. I'm getting a little gray in my, beard. And,
I got these racing stripes on the side.
Well, it seems like social media kind of, and this sounds negative. I don't mean it to sound negative, but social media can kind of be a self-aggrandizing, congratulatory thing where everybody just kind of, they show you pictures of their life that they want you to see. And I love to attempt to be the opposite of that. I love to just kind of, be the self-defacing, maybe even a little bit, self-effacing for sure. And so anyway, that experience was such a rough experience fishing, where I had a little problem while I was fishing related to excess fiber consumption.
Oh no.
That I figured I'd write about it and make myself the butt of a joke, and it was it was very well received, and that kind of began the journey. Another time that I wrote that really kind of pressed me forward in the early days was I had walked into, it was either the Pig or it was the Winn-Dixie, and I watched a butcher give away meat that was going to be expiring the next day but hadn't expired yet to a handful of young Mexican men who they'd just gotten off the job site and they were dirty and they couldn't afford much, and he gave them this huge stack of meat, and it was really, they tried to say, no, we can't take this. He said, no, you have to take it because tomorrow it expires. Anyway, I wrote about that, and next thing I know, I'm this is what I'm doing with my life. So
I love it. For people, we're really fortunate. We're so fortunate, really, that people from all over the place listen to this podcast. For those of you that are not from the South, Sean, when he says the Pig, is talking about a grocery store. It's called Piggly Wiggly. Yeah. I knew what you were talking about, brother.
Oh, but, I knew it too.
But I'm sorry. I was like, I bet there's some people that are like from Washington State, like, what's he talking about? The pig?
Yeah, sorry, I got to clarify that.
I love it. No, I
was in traffic today, actually riding down the road, and saw a Piggly Wiggly truck, and I didn't know that they actually called themselves the Pig too. It was all over the side. It said, "Come to the Pig." I thought, wow,
they just embraced it.
Yeah, why not?
Oh, that's great. So go ahead, Brad.
Where did this clearly a clear love for story for you? Where did that come from?
I don't know. That's a good question. I grew up in church, obviously, and I've starved to death in church many times when the preacher gets going on his rabbit trails that go for, into the far recesses of, known thought, and we have no idea what he's talking about. But every now and then, and we had a terrible preacher growing up. He was awful. I mean, he preached he had two really good sermons, and he preached one the day he came to us and the other one the day he left. And he was just miserable. But every now and then we would have a visiting guest preacher. And he was old. And he'd come in and he didn't even preach, he just told stories.
Mhm.
And he had everybody. He had everybody with him. We didn't know where the story was going. We didn't know. And I remember just being a kid, and it was the only time I didn't have a problem falling asleep in church or, just
Mhm.
not paying attention. That maybe is one place where I
Sure.
learned to like stories, but another place was the front porch. Old men always told stories.
Mm.
Yeah.
It was something that only, it seemed like as a child, only old men could do, because the younger men either didn't have the experience or the knowledge
Mm.
to follow in that footstep. And so as men would age, it was fun to watch them embrace their own nostalgia and tell some stories. And
That's good.
uh, the art, I think, is maybe disappearing now.
Mm.
I think some of our generation is kind of, they're not as apt to sit on a porch and tell stories like they used to. There's a little more phone presence, that
Mhm.
iPhone presence, that kills that maybe. But
I
I'm
think
hoping
at the heart
hoping
of
it comes back.
what we're trying to do really revolves around that, Sean. I mean,
Yeah,
we sometimes we jokingly call this podcast a digital campfire, where we get to tell some stories, right?
Mhm.
And
I love it.
our goal is to see stories written down, stories told, and hopefully we'll leave a wealth of stories for our kids to go back and listen through the catalog of us talking to,
Oh yeah,
guys like you,
yeah.
to hear stories and
Well,
hear their experiences.
everybody's got one, and
Yeah.
the best stories are the stories from your worst days.
Mm.
And the funniest stories are from your worst experiences. And we used to share those communitively as
Mhm.
I'm not sure if communitively is a word, but I didn't want to say communicably because that sounds too much like a disease. But we used to share those.
Oh.
You'd watch old men talk, and they had worked their stories out. You know, they
Yeah.
had they had honed them down because they told them enough at enough feed stores and hardware stores to get to the punchline quicker and to throw
Mhm.
away the stuff that doesn't matter. And they were good. You
Yep.
listen to the story and you knew it was going to be a good story. They had worked on it. And I have a few friends still, they're much older than me. And when they do that and they get around groups of people, someone will point to them and say, tell that story. And someone will get into that mode. And it's wonderful.
It
And
is.
I hope that lasts forever. Anyway, I'm glad to be among us, if to be considered a storyteller. I'm not sure I'm any good at it, but I like it.
Yeah.
Oh man, absolutely. I mean, and that's, you know, this podcast episode will air after one of your latest stories will be published in a book form. So it's
Yeah.
going to be October 12th is the day that this one will air, and
Yeah. So
11th is whenever you're launching your
that's right.
latest book.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Wow.
So
You'll be
Very
the
exciting.
first.
well, we the timing just worked out with that, but man, I haven't had a chance to read it. Your publicist sent me a copy of it, and I am the world's slowest reader. And so I'll get to it, but what I read of it, I read the first chapter and the introduction, and my goodness, I'm hooked. I cannot wait to hear this
Well,
story. And so can you tell us a little bit about, what happens?
yeah. It happened during the pandemic. My wife and I, work slowed way, way down. We were on the road 80% of the year
Mhm.
usually,
Wow.
and then
Wow.
all of a sudden, nothing.
De,
I mean,
de
we had
nada.
visited like, you know, 39 states, I think, in 1 year, and we were just tired and burnt, probably more burnt than we realized. And so then it shuts down, and I was on my last nonfiction book tour during the shutdown. And as we were leaving the city that we were in, I think it might have been Huntsville, there were these long lines standing outside Walmart people waiting to get Charmin. And it was just, the world just changed. And so here I am landlocked at home. Jamie comes up with this idea to ride 350 miles on bikes. And I said, do what?
That's a long way.
You're gonna run
Yeah,
that by me one more time?
yeah, I didn't, I wasn't quite on board. And so that the book is about that. It's about our trip. It's about the days leading up to the trip. And it turned out to be an incredibly transformative trip for me. Very transformative, actually. But I'm not an athlete. I'm nothing even close to an athlete. I'm more of a little Debbie guy. And the idea of me being out in nature like this was, kicking my own tail was novel. And anyway, after it was done, my wife and I, we spend all the time outside now. We hike all the time. We hike at least twice a week. And I mean, just this morning I was on Mount Cheaha and up near Talladega, the tallest point in Alabama, hiking. I just can't get enough of it now. Something happened. My wife and I had a transformation, I guess you could say.
I know as I was reading about the writing of that and the story, and they were gracious to send us the press kit. Part of that was some story about your wife having the potential for cancer.
Yeah, yeah. When we
What-
first got
what-
married,
What was that
Okay.
like when you got that kind of a news or potential?
when we were newlyweds still, and my wife had a scare, and it was a long drawn out scare. It wasn't, just a couple weeks or anything. They really didn't know, and they kept doing tests, and it just, I mean, it was awful. It was, and I feel bad telling you it was awful, because doing what I do, I've met a lot of people, and I come in contact with a lot of people who have had way worse experiences, whereas it turned out not to be cancer in my wife, thank
Right.
God. So I feel silly saying that it was so bad, but there is something that I've heard from all cancer patients who have suffered on any stage, is that the hardest part is the part where you wait because you don't know something. Whether you have stage 4 or it's benign, it's that waiting, it's that not knowing, that not being able to sleep, that absolute perpetual anxiety. So we experienced that, and that was part of the catalyst for this trip a long time ago. We just never followed through on it until many years later.
How about that? Man, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, and I had a scare this year, me, and I
Oh,
went to the
wow.
doctor, and I was in a holding period for a little while, and it was scary. And they did all sorts of tests on me, and they could never tell you anything. And I was at a Braves game. We were walking around Truist Park, and I had just gotten an adult beverage that was not manufactured by Coca-Cola. And I had just cracked open my $36 Coors Light when I get the phone call from the doctor that says you're okay, you're in the clear.
Man,
Wow.
The test came back negative, and it was one of the greater nights of my existence. The Braves lost, but that's okay.
$200 later.
But the
Oh,
Braves
man.
right now, as I say this, are down one game to almost. They're below the Mets. If they, we have a chance at being the National League champions
There you
again.
go. Oh, yeah.
So I'm hoping for that.
Man, that's one of those things where reflection plays such a big part in it, and even if it's not a diagnosis, even if it's not something that alters your life drastically, it helps to put things in perspective.
Oh man, yes. I mean, both hers and mine, and really, this last one for me really was transformative. I mean, maybe one of the most. I mean, I've used that word transformative a lot on this podcast already. You guys are like miracle workers. I don't think I've ever used that word more than once or twice in my life.
Oh, the outdoors by Barbara Walters here.
I felt when that was done that and it's this is so cliche to say, but it was the carpe diem thing. I mean, have an extra piece of pie if you want it. If you feel like skipping out on work today and doing something that's a little more soul gratifying, do it. Because this could be the day. This could be the last day. If you are at a restaurant and you have a designated driver, have that extra beer. I mean, you don't have to drink all the time, but live, that's the thought that's been going through my head. Don't just eat one piece of pizza, eat 4 or 5. You'll pay for it, yes, but do it. If you want to do it right now, responsibly, enjoy your life. It did alter my perception a little bit in a good way. I'm sure I'll go back to being, self-deluded, jaded, selfish pig later, but right now I'm feeling a lot more more.
So this new book is called You Are My Sunshine, a story of love, promises, and a really long bike ride. Give us an idea of where that title came from.
Well, You Are My Sunshine is a song everybody loves, and I find it interesting. This is one of the only songs that is sung to you. It's never, if you're singing something with friends, or not like everybody gets together and sings, but let's say you're in a band or something, you're singing out and about, you're singing in public. If you're singing at home and you're humming a melody, the Andy Griffith theme, you're not singing that to anybody. But when you sing You Are My Sunshine, it's usually sung by a parental figure or some maternal figure to a child figure. And I think that's maybe at least that's how I heard it. My mother, my aunt, they would sing this to me. And it was always code for I love you. And so when my mother-in-law was passing, and the book had been written at this point, and yet we had the title, I think, but it wasn't solidified in our minds. My mother-in-law was dying; she was on her deathbed. And my mother-in-law either asked if I'd come and play some music for her at her bedside, and she had hours left. We didn't know that at the time, but so I went and I showed up with a guitar, and I felt really ridiculous playing music for someone who's passing. And I mean, I would feel ridiculous in a room playing for anybody anyway. It's different when you're in a live setting, but when you're just sitting around and playing, you feel like an idiot, like you're trying to get everybody to look at you. So I felt kind of a little bit timid, and I was singing hymns mostly to her, in the garden, leaning on the everlasting arms. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. Old rugged cross, softly and tenderly. And then we were singing some songs that she liked from her early days, like Hank Williams Sr. And then I sang You Are My Sunshine, and she just, she changed her. And then I was singing it to my wife too. And so then we're all crying, we're all just wailing. And then she passed not long after that. And then I think I realized that I wanted to name that book this for certain, because, this was a book about my wife, and she is, well, my sunshine. So there it is.
Man. That's it's got a lot of meaning behind that. It's got a lot of meaning. There's for people who are writers, there's a lot of thought, a lot of just strategy, but a lot of intentionality that goes behind the titles. And that one has a new outlook now that we kind of know the backstory of it.
I like books that have the names of songs. 3 of my books are named after songs. Stars of Alabama was after
Mhm.
Stars Fell in Alabama. One of my favorite tunes too. Actually written by a guy in Savannah, of all things. And anyway, then I like my second, or my autobiography ish memoir, whatever you call it, uh, was Will the Circle Be Unbroken, which
Mhm.
is a quintessential funeral song. Uh,
Mhm, mhm.
and then this, You Are My Sunshine. Maybe I'll name a book All Around the Watchtower or something like a Jimi Hendrix tune, or Free Bird.
Yeah, nice.
So
Nice.
music is obviously also a big part of your life, and Brad is a musician. Y'all have a lot in common with being able to play the guitar. I can't play the radio, and it seems to be something that's also a form of storytelling.
Yeah, for sure.
I would agree. I would say it is. Some of the best writers I know are musical. They have musical ears. They can hear the phrasing of a good line. And there is something in our English language recognizes good phrasing and mediocre phrasing. And there's something about the rhythm of the syllables of a line that I found that musicians, they usually make decent writers, but I happen to be the exception to that. But I play, my first instrument was the piano when I was a kid, and the accordion. Those are my first instruments. And I still play the accordion live, and I still play the piano live occasionally, but no one really connects with the piano. I learned how to play the guitar when I was 9, and I never really improved. But I've been playing it since. And one day I hope I'm gonna get good at it, but I'm getting a little long in the tooth, so I'm still waiting.
I do really appreciate your style of play. It's not um I'm by trade I'm a worship leader. I'm a worship pastor. Well, I've led worship for my church for a long time. Now my roles at church are changing as a pastor, but for a long time I've been a worship leader. So I'm more of a strummer than a finger picker.
Yeah.
But certainly appreciate man, that style of play is I never get tired of listening to it. Even this morning I listened to, a whole bunch of your YouTube. I guess it's your
Oh,
trailer,
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
your camper series where you're sitting out in front of your camper and just listening to all those and just really set the mood for the day for me and really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
What shaped that approach to guitar for you?
Oh, definitely Merle Travis,
Hmm.
uh, and Chet Atkins, and all the great finger pickers. And my uncle taught me how to play the guitar. He's was one of the initial teachers, and this was the way that you play the guitar in his generation. The
Right,
plectrum was still kind of a new invention, later called the pick or whatever, and
right.
so that was kind of a fancy thing. You played with your hands, and you played alternating bass with your thumb.
Yeah,
And I liked it because it sounded like a one man band. You didn't you had the rhythm there, and you had a different melody line kind of moving, and then when you sang with that, it was a lot going on. I
yeah.
loved it, and it took me forever to learn how to do it. It just did not come natural to me, and I really had to, I wasn't a virtuoso. I'm not a virtuoso at anything. I had to really work to get it. And
Yeah.
now that's how I hear every song. And so I'm afraid I've become a one trick pony because, that's pretty much
Well,
what I do all the time.
it's a good trick, brother.
Well, thank you.
It's a good trick.
Thank you.
So this
Uh,
bike. Go ahead. Go
yeah,
ahead.
go
I'm sorry.
ahead. No, that's it. I don't
N-
even remember what I was going to say now.
Well, I'm sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say, did you take your guitar with you on your bike ride?
No, I did not. That would have been a disaster. That would have been a disaster because I I rode this trail with a trike.
So
So
Yeah.
is this a
really it's
recumbent? Is that like a recumbent
yep,
bike?
yes, it's recumbent. It's basically a giant toy is all it is. This is what children ride. It's just bigger.
My
And
son, my son's 7 years old, and when we were on the trail, he calls it a relax bike.
well,
I was like, well, that's
that's
a great way to describe it.
it is. I mean, the only difference is when I got out there on the trail, I didn't see anybody else riding any. And the first day I thought, this is should be a sign unto me that that something is really. And I realized immediately why no one else was riding them, because this made the trail exponentially harder for me, because the tires of my trike are small
Mhm.
and I'm in a recumbent position, which immediately puts me in an advantage because I don't have gravity. So Jamie's tires, my wife, her tires are huge. So one little flick of the ankle gives her like 3 rotations. For me, 2 rotations on the pedals barely turned my tire one time. So she is riding and I am riding somewhere level with her butt, because I'm way below her, and I
Yeah.
am pedaling like a man with his hair on fire just to keep up with her. And we had, roughly 400 miles to travel that way. And it was, it was hell on earth.
Wow.
And then when we got to the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal towpath, that's when the Great Allegheny Passage feeds into the Chesapeake and Ohio, in West Virginia, or I think it might do it in Maryland, or no, West Virginia. So anyway, that's where the trail becomes dirt and rock.
Oh wow, it's like a gravel road basically.
Well, more like a road that never existed. Like, and I was pedaling through just god awful terrain and just struggling. I struggled the whole way through. And bikers had whipped past me, and I'm eye level with their knees, and they're looking down at me going, "Hey buddy," passing me.
You
So
can do it, buddy.
yeah, exactly. Finally, when I got to Washington, when we finished the trail in Washington, D.C. When I got to Washington, D.C., I saw one man on a trike, a big guy, and he passed me, and I looked at him, and we shared this little moment of commiseration, like, yeah, I know what you just went through.
I know.
So I assume that you segmented this ride.
Mhm.
Is that a false assumption, or is that correct? Or
Segmented it, like, what do you mean?
like, I mean, you didn't just go 6 months from start to finish on,
Oh no,
spending the night
we
along the
did go
way.
all the way. We did go all the way through. Yeah, it
Oh
was.
wow. Okay.
But it didn't take us 6 months, although it felt like it. Uh, it took us longer though than anybody else on the trail. I like to say that everybody else on the trail finished in probably normal time, whereas it took Jamie and I longer to finish the trail than it takes most people to complete a PhD. But and most of the time that was because of me. She could have gone a lot faster, but she had to wait for her little brother on his little tricycle. So
Oh man.
Well,
Oh, I'm sure. Like, who all did you? You're on a trail like that, doing something like that. I know you got to run into some characters.
oh yeah, great people. We met them from all over the nation. The trail receives about 1 million visitors every year,
Really?
and that was just on the off years. Now, after the pandemic happened, there was a worldwide bike shortage.
mhm.
Yes, I
So
did know that.
the entire world had no bikes. Everybody wanted to get out and ride bikes. So we were not
Mhm.
unusual in that. And a lot of them were riding the trail. I would estimate that during the pandemic, there weren't hardly any bikers in some spots. And then on other spots, there were plenty. So I don't really know what the numbers were. I've heard different accounts that it was higher during the pandemic, and I've heard accounts that it was extremely low. So I don't know, but I do know that as of now, this thing receives a lot of visitors. So we met international people. We met
Mhm.
people from just about every state in the U.S., including Hawaii. We met folks from everywhere and from all different walks. I met hikers who were trying to quit smoking and trying to get their life back after their girlfriend left them. I met people who had just been lost their job, and they just wanted to figure out what they were going to do with their life, and they were walking it. And I met a guy. He didn't make it into the book. He was a ex clergy, and he was a cutter that they cut, you know, razor blade marks in themselves. I don't know what you'd call it, self mutilation. He was
Mhm.
trying to recover from this because he'd been doing it in secret,
Yeah.
and he was a beautiful guy, wonderful man. And I met recovering alcoholics. I met some great folks. and we all kind of shared this one thing in common. We were all trying to get to the end, and it was really a great, almost too easy metaphor for a book, you know.
Yeah. You mentioned feelings of regret. You said I've lived the majority of my life snug in the lap of strip malls. I was feeling a bit of regret, like you deprived yourself of basic human right of being outside. Can you talk about that some?
Yeah. Just this morning, I had a writing gig that I was leaving, like I said, up in Talladega County. And as I was leaving Talladega this morning, I walked out of my hotel, checked out, and I looked in the lobby, and there was this big table full of guys in suits, and they were having this meeting. Obviously, they were traveling businessmen of some sort, and there was a lot of energy around that table. There was a lot of high energy conversations happening. There's a pecking order. There was a hierarchy going on. You could see it all right there in front of you. There was a boss. There were people who were climbing the ladder. And then I got out of the hotel and I was in the parking lot. And in Talladega, you can see the Appalachian Mountains. You're in the Appalachian Mountains, the very, very bottom portion of the Appalachians. And I looked at these swelling green hills all around me. And the two scenarios felt so entirely different to me.
Mm-hmm.
You got inside, you got these people who are doing what just about everybody does. We live around a society that is based on money. And that's really what it boils down to. Making money. Businesses want to make money. The employees want to make money so that they can have children, so they can send their children to good colleges, so their children can grow up to make money, and they can do all that. And it's great. We got to do it. I get it. Okay. I'm not saying that we should all just live in double wides like I did. But when you get outside and you look at those hills, you look at the mountains, you find yourself surrounded by a green space. Money doesn't play into the picture at all. There is no societal concern. There is no hierarchy and pecking order. It's just, I need food. I need water. I need to make sure my body is in okay condition. Is my knee a little tight? Is my ankle hurting? Am I going to make it to the end? It's about thisness, this now. And that's a really interesting perspective shift for me, because as soon as you get back into the real world, you're assaulted with graphic t-shirts that have brands up on the, on the fronts that are trying to sell you something, even though the person wearing it is not aware that they're trying to sell you something. And you walk inside a gas station and there's 100 billboards that are trying to get you to buy this, buy that. And you're drinking Purple Mountain Dew and you're in your truck, which, consuming gasoline. And it's just this artificial thing. And I live in that world. Everybody does. Mm-hmm. But getting outside, it reacquaints you, or reacquainted me with life. And it was kind of like figuring out that you're a fish, but for the last 45 years, someone's been trying to get you to climb a tree. And then all of a sudden you realize in this green space, oh my gosh, I can swim. Mm-hmm. I can do this. This is kind of where maybe I was even meant to be. This is cool. And it reacquaints you with who maybe you forgot about when you were a kid. Wow, that was a really long answer. But let's all take a moment and reflect on how wise I sound.
I think we should. Can we pass an offering plate between the three of us?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you were talking, it just made me think it's almost like we were created to be in a garden.
Yep. Wow. I mean, there's a tree in Genesis and there's a tree in Revelation. Each book, the whole book ends and starts with a tree. So when you get around a lot of trees, it's really interesting. Mm-hmm. You really grow to love these things.
Why is that? What your experience on this trail is, I feel like the crux of this story. Why is that important for people to know? Why is that important for you to share that? I like to write, and I feel like when I write things, I have this desire to share whether it's a thought or an experience, or whatever it is with other people, more than just the fact that, oh, I'm going to write a book and get the book out there. You know, I want them to understand what I understand, or experience what I experienced. Why is this story so important for other people?
Well, because like I'd said about the having a scare and not knowing what's not knowing how long we have left. This was incredibly special for Jamie and me to be together, to be healthy enough to have fun, to get into trouble, to try to figure out what we're doing. It was such a moment of my life that was sharper and more vivid and more profound than normal moments, that I wanted to remember it. I wanted to document it so that we always had it, so that we remembered it together, her and I, because one day we're going to be up in age and we're not going to be able to do things like this. And in my job as a writer, I've met a lot of people who have passed on, and in their later experiences with life, as they're coming close to the end, like on a sick bed or even a deathbed, nobody ever talks about how they wanted to be more of a success, or how they wished uh, they would have made more money or had that piece of furniture. Whatever. It's always relationships. It always comes down to the relationships. They wish they would have done something with a loved one that they've always wanted to do. And I suppose I just kind of want to remind myself that we did it. That was maybe one of the motivating factors of writing the book. I wrote it for my wife. She wanted to do this, and I wanted her to have it. So
that's great. After listening to a handful of interviews, just trying to get a better understanding of who you were, and even in this conversation, Sean, there's what I feel like a genuine humility beyond sort of a self-deprecation or a false humility that's sort of fishing for compliments. What is the source of this humility for you?
Oh, well, first of all, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And it's clear for me. I had a really rough childhood. I grew up believing I was beneath everybody else. Today represents the 28th anniversary of my father's suicide, and that's when life changed for me completely. And so it's been almost 3 decades now, and I grew up kind of underprivileged. I guess that term's thrown around a lot these days, but in many ways I was beneath my peers. I dropped out of school when I was in 7th grade, so that certainly helped. Because I felt beneath everybody else, you carry this with you. You go into a room full of people and you feel like you are beneath everyone in this room. You pick anybody in that room, you are beneath them. I don't know how to explain it. It's taken me a long time to arrive at a space in my head where I believe that I'm not above anybody else, but I'm also not beneath anybody else. We're all on the same line together. But that took a lot of mental work. That took a lot of. I have a good friend who I met at church a long time ago, he's a family therapist and doctor, and I was never his patient, but he made me like a son to him. And I've done a lot of work on myself. I've practiced a lot of stuff to try to feel not confident, because I don't think that I'll ever get that back. I'm not sure I ever was graced with much anyway, but it would be comfort with myself, comfortable, at ease in my own skin. Whatever I am, and and to just be okay with that. I've been spending most of my life trying to be okay. So my humility, if that's what you call it, which God bless you, because my wife would probably, tell you you're wrong, is just, you know, probably probably not a good place, actually. It's probably not from a good place altogether. I wish I had more whatever you call it, more, not pride, but more gusto in that area. So,
Well, I'll speak to this and say it may not have come from a good place, but it is refreshing to see someone who's not full of themselves.
well, I appreciate that.
But you are, I mean, I enjoyed your music and your stories, and you are gifted, but
Thank
you
you.
don't carry yourself in that way, and that is refreshing. And that, though it didn't come from a great place, it is a great attribute of who you are, and a lot of who we are is forged from things that weren't great. I can look back and reflect on my own life and the experiences I've had that weren't great experiences, but the outcome of those experiences made me into a man that is better for it.
Yeah,
right?
no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I mean, I would. Sometimes I wonder what I'd look like if my father would not have died the way he did and left us with some of the baggage he left us with. And I don't know that I like what I imagine. I feel things pretty deeply when I see someone suffering. I feel it too deeply. It affects me really, really bad. But I'm not sure that I want to give that up because there aren't many. Speaking as somebody who has suffered, there aren't many people that I knew who were willing to feel suffering with you. They were very content to give you something that eased their own conscience and to move on.
Wow.
It's very important to have somebody. Misery loves company, they say, and it's true. But when you are in misery, sometimes you need company. And so I wouldn't want to give that up. And a lot of what I do as a story is when I tell stories and stuff is to tell the story of somebody who I see who's not going through a wonderful time of their lives. And I probably wouldn't even notice them had I not, had I grown up a different way.
Sure.
And there's nothing wrong with not noticing. I'm not saying that other people who go through life in different ways that are wrong. I don't ever want to say that. I just happen to be tuned to just a little bit different of a frequency, probably, and just like a lot of people.
Yeah, it takes all kinds, man, and I'm thankful for you.
Well, thank you,
Sean. The one of the things that we like to talk about on this podcast is experiences that God used to shape us. We talked a lot about this bike ride being transformative, and
that's number 6. The time 6. It's been used, right?
Yeah, we just turned this into a drinking game. But was there a point on the trail where this light bulb went off, and God was like, "Look at what you maybe have been missing"?
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's when you are coming into Cumberland, Maryland. There is a spot. Now I rode this trail, or we came. Let's see. Yeah, how do we do it? We came into. I can't remember which city we came into. That's my dog, by the way.
Is that Thelma?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. I have no idea who's like somebody's in the street or something. She sees him. And I rode these trails around the time of my. You hear that?
She's still jealous that you didn't take her.
Very. I rode these trails around the time of my father's of the anniversary of my father's death, and when I it's hard to. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. I love it.
Is she ruining your quality?
No, we're dog people, so this is part of it.
It's no big deal.
We when we finished the trail, the first one, the Great Allegheny Passage. I've got to shut the door. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Okay, no problem. I love it. This is so funny.
I know, man. Thelma Lou, she's on it, baby.
Have you seen a picture of her? She is beautiful.
I saw her in one of his YouTube videos.
Yeah.
I think it showed her, him walking her in one of the videos. Yeah,
I'm a mailman away from Roscoe doing the same thing. He's just
so sorry.
It's all right, bro.
Hey, I have a dog named Roscoe, and he's staring out the window right now, and I'm one mailman or delivery man away from the same thing.
UPS is on the way.
Where was I? What was I talking about? I've forgotten now.
You're talking about coming into it was Cumberland. Was it Cumberland?
Cumberland.
Yeah.
So I rode these trails on the anniversary of my father's. I always do something on my father's anniversary of this. And this year is actually the exception. I mean, I'm probably going to do something after we're off the recording, but I'm not real sure what that is yet. But usually I do something kind of big for myself. And we rode through this kind of wild part. And it was an incredibly important day. My wife knew it was incredibly important day for me. And a short backstory before I tell you this, the book I had written about my father, a memoir about my father, Will the Circle Being Broken, was about my life. And throughout the book, there are moments where my father, his memory becomes startlingly clear when a blue heron comes into my life. Now, when a blue heron is present, it seems like he's always present at some pivotal time. It's amazing to me. I have seen blue heron at the Grand Canyon. I've seen blue heron on top of mountains. I've seen blue heron. The blue heron is the main bird you'll see in Florida around the Choctawhatchee Bay.
Oh, yeah.
And it is and these birds follow me around. They follow me everywhere. And I can't get away from them. And so we always said growing up that my daddy resembled a heron because he was long-legged, very slender. So the fact that these birds show up is kind of serendipitous. So we're on this trail. We're in another state, my wife and I, and we're riding. And it is the anniversary of his end. And flying beside my trike is a blue heron.
Come on.
And he comes straight forward and he turns and he gets in front of me and he lands on this log, this fallen tree that is at a big diagonal to the trail. And he's perched atop this tree looking down at me as I roll past. And then he jumps off the tree and flies ahead so he can get another look at me as I roll past. Well, I was a mess. I mean, it was extremely powerful. And my wife even looked at me and because she knew we'd been through so many rounds of edits with that book and she'd read that and she knew, she's always known. And that was a pretty powerful experience. And actually that experience was probably so powerful that I'm not even sure that I wrote much about it in the book. I think I included it, but I'm not sure I included it in the book because I didn't want this book to be all dismal. I wanted this book to be positive and happy. But that kind of stuff, I believe that's a wink from the creator. I mean, even just a few days ago on my dad's birthday, he was September the 11th was his birthday. I took a canoe trip, short day trip with some friends down the Tallahassee River, just up here. And, we're halfway into the trip. And what do you think's flying beside my canoe? Blue heron, his birthday. I mean, there's something weird about it. I don't see him any other day of the year. In Alabama, at least. I mean, but anyway.
That's cool. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that with us. That's really I feel like if we're looking, God's going to give us some comfort in
I agree.
some things that maybe other people don't even see it as.
I agree. My goal is to look more if I can remember to do it.
That's good.
I mean, both Brian and I are big believers in, and that not happening as much sitting on the couch, but it happens a whole lot more when you get outside.
That's got to be true. That has got to be true.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love we earlier we referenced this podcast as a digital campfire. If what's your and you know how you mentioned earlier about storytelling and the old timers having their tell that story, you know.
Yeah.
What's your go-to campfire story?
Well, I've got a bunch. How long we got?
we're on your time, brother.
Well, okay. The Grand Ole Opry was always a big deal in my life, and I grew up listening to it every Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
The world is a very different place now. I know that doesn't even happen probably for kids to listen to the Grand Ole. I'm sure they don't even listen to the radio. They stream stuff, but there was this really fun communal sense of being on the Grand Ole Opry, listening to the Grand Ole Opry and kind of being there with everybody else listening to the Grand Ole Opry. So I loved Minnie Pearl. Minnie Pearl was just the best, and my father loved Minnie Pearl, and he could tell all her good jokes, and she had some good ones too. And so we were living in Tennessee, and I was in kindergarten, and my dad was working on the GM plant at the in Spring Hill. So he was one of the foremans, I believe, which was really a big step up for him because he was just a stick welder, and to be a foreman was huge. And he wore denim to work every day of his life and boots. I mean, he was like the main character from a country song to me, cowboy. He was a cowboy. So to me, as a kid, your dad's your hero. So he came home one day covered in soot and said, "How would you like to go to the Grand Ole Opry?" I said, "Does a pope go to the woods?" And give you a second to think about that. And he said, so I looked and I said, how are we going to go? He said, "Well, I got the fix. I know someone who's going to get us in." So we drove across town to get to the Opry, and I was so excited. And beforehand, we stopped and we got ice cream, and then we ate dinner. Not the other way around, which was just spectacular to not eat ice cream after dinner, but before dinner. Wow, what a thought! And we get to the place where the Opry is. It wasn't at the Ryman; it was at Opryland when I came along, and the place is sold out. There are no tickets. He can't get in. He doesn't know anybody, and we are devastated. And life has gone back to being dismal and bland, and my life may never be the same again. I'm just miserable, So we're walking back through the hotel of the Opry just to get our money's worth and look around at this opulence all around us. And we see this man in this big, tall, powder blue suit with this gigantic 50-gallon hat, and he's got rhinestones all over him. And my father walks up to him and he's like, sir, excuse me." And this guy's on his way. He's rushing somewhere. I guess he's going to be on the Opry. The man turns around and my daddy says, "This is my son. He'd really like to meet you." And the guy turns around and it's Ernest Tubb, who I learned 3 or 4 of his songs when I was learning how to play the guitar, like "Waltz Across Texas" and "Walking the Floor Over You." And so we loved Ernest Tubb, and it was Ernest Tubb. And he looks at me, and he had a ruined voice. He said, "Well, nice to meet you, son." Now my daddy hands him this slip of paper from somewhere, and he says, "Would you mind making an autograph out to my son? His name's John," which is my father's name and not my name. And so Ernest Tubb makes this autograph out to my father, even though it's, not to me. And we keep walking. And we go out to the truck and we listen to the Opry. The Opry's over. It's a good show. And we go back into the hotel to try to see what we can see. And down through the lobby comes this woman in this big hat with a price tag hanging off.
Mini
And
pearl.
there are flowers hanging on her hat, and she's got this crowd of people around her. And we're standing there, and she zeroes in on us. And she comes over, and she hugs my father and gives him a big old kiss on his cheek. And she leaves this lipstick print on his cheek. And then she gets, she talks to me, and we are just, I mean, I'm over the moon. And we get back out to the truck, and my father looks at me and he says, "If you tell your mother about this, I'll kill you." And that was probably one of my greatest memories of the Opry. I've gone other times, but seeing Minnie Pearl like that, kiss my father, that was a good one. That was a good one.
Did you ever tell your mom about that?
I have in live settings.
Not that day.
Exactly. Not that day.
Oh, that's funny. Sean, this has been such a great conversation. The question that we like to close on every time we have a guest is, what is your next adventure?
Boy, it's a good question. I don't know. I would like to hike a piece of the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
With my wife. We were going to do it actually in a few days because someone had invited me up to write about a bluegrass festival in Bristol, Virginia, and I was going to write about it, and then we were going to go hike. And things got in the way. We weren't able to do it. But I would like to somehow spend a little bit of time on the Appalachian Trail just to say that I did it.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows? Maybe I'll be able to fit that in.
That sounds like a good one.
Yeah, that's great. Where, Sean, where can people find out about your book and about your music, and what's the best place to send them to?
I'm the worst person to ask about stuff like this because I'm not a salesman, and I feel really ridiculous telling people about it. So I say just Google my name, and you'll get what you get. And I'm sorry.
Well, I tell you what, we've already done some of that for you. We'll have, so in our show notes, we'll have links to Amazon where they can buy your book, and
okay, that's good.
And links to all your social medias and all of those things. So
That's
we'll make
good.
sure that they connect with you, man. We thank you so much for taking time to join us.
And, man, thank you for having me. I can't believe you even want me. I'm appreciative. This is nice.
Yeah, man. It's right.
Y'all are easy to talk to too.
You're our people, man. You're our people.
Hey, I think we're all probably cut from the same cloth. I can tell.
I just wish I had the strong red beard like you guys. I'm sitting over here, baby face in the middle of these two.
That's right. Vikings. We look kind of like brothers. But I was just every time I'd be talking, I'd look at your names on the screen and say Brad Hill, Brian Gill, and I didn't notice that I kept getting you confused. I'd see BRA or BR and ILL at the end. I mean, y'all have names that are very similar.
Yeah.
We almost went with the Gill and Hill podcast, but we decided against it. So
that would have been good.
But, yeah, they're pretty catchy. But man, it's just been some good stuff just to think about and to share. Thank you for sharing your heart and being like we said, I know you probably didn't. No one loves to hear someone say, how humble you are, and that's just weird. But I do appreciate the way you carry yourself, and the way you share your art, and the way you care about the story, and so we're really thankful, and we hope that inspires people. Ultimately, that's our goal here, and like we shared earlier, is that this is a way for us to get stories like Minnie Pearl's stories down, or your bike story in your book. Those are things that we hope inspire people to do the very same thing, and that's write down their experiences and write down what they learned and reflect on those experiences and those people that they met and how they've changed or they've transformed. And we drink something because we said transformed 8 times now. But man, what a great conversation. And we hope this does that, inspires people to share their own stories, write them down, and have some adventures in what we call the storied outdoors.
That's so good.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please take some time to leave us a review, or better yet, share it with a friend. We hope these stories encourage you to write your own stories and share your own adventures in the storied outdoors.
Brad Hill here. There is no better way to share a story than around a campfire. And if you are in the Mobile Bay area, there is no better place to get firewood than our friends at Mobile Bay Firewood. This is a family-owned business, and I personally love using their easy-to-light, kiln-dried firewood in my fire pit. So use promo code MBFTSO for $15 off of your next order at mobilebayfirewood.com. Longtime friends of the podcast, the Growley Leather Company is a family-owned leather goods company in southern Alabama. All of their leather goods are designed and handcrafted to come alongside you in your daily life, share in your adventures, and reflect your character. Brian and I both enjoy products from Growley Leather. So visit growleyleather.com and use promo code TSO2022 for a 15% discount at checkout. Find you a leather journal and fill it with stories from the storied outdoors.